everything's working before I get going. So here comes the stream, slight delay. There it looks good. All right. Let's go ahead and get this started. So I have hand reviews from yesterday, and then we're going to jump into it. Today is a play day, so I'm not going to go too long today, but I wanted to go through this stuff, and we do even have cash game hands from yesterday. But these are all, whatchamacallit. These first four are a tournament. So let's see. At what point? Yeah, we're about at the start of this tournament, I think. So player opens in first. I go ahead and 3-bet right out of second. This was just one of those things where 50-50 on making this raise. I didn't want to call because behind these players had been 3-betting a bit, these three in here. So I figured if I take the 3-bet away, I'll do better off. And I bought position, which is nice. Gets called. Flop comes off 8 deuce deuce. Pretty good for me. Player checks. I bet 1/3 pot. Kind of feel okay about it. Get called. Ace on the turn. This player checks. And at this point in the hand, I'm kind of unsure of where I am. And it's an interesting hand because I went back and watched it. And in-game, I was like, that ace is really bad for me, but it's supposed to be good, which is true. I should have all the ace-kings, right? Like, if this player's in first and let's say he raised with something good, and then I 3-bet him, you got to think of what are the hands that he doesn't want to 4-bet from first position when second position raises him. And those hands are like jacks, queens, could be some hands like ace-queen for sure. A lot of hands that are pairs, right? Because I think kings and aces are going to 4-bet, right? Maybe aces doesn't specifically, but now there's one on board, so I'm not too worried about it. So all this is going through my head, and I realized I was taking too long, so I decided to go ahead and check. Wow, wrong hand. I decided to go ahead and bet 2/3 because he shouldn't have an ace a lot. So unless he has specifically ace-queen, I should be okay here. And even then, he can't love it because I'm still betting. So he goes ahead and folds, and we take it down. And I think this is a scenario where where I didn't have the best hand necessarily, but I was able to convince him of it. Like, I kind of turned my hand into a bluff, but kind of didn't. Like, he could have had 9s or 7s or something for sure. But I think it's more likely that he was trying to determine whether or not I had kings, aces, ace-king, or queens, and he has a hand like jacks or queens. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. And then when I just bet the ace on the turn, which should be good for me and really can't be good for him, because if he has ace-king, he's probably going to re-raise pre-flop, you know? So, yeah, interesting little scenario, and I like the way it played out. There was another hand with 10s, but I think that was a cash game where I did the same thing, but checked the turn because it was a cash game. All right, let's go on to the next one. Pocket 8s. I make the open, get 3-bet by the small blind, which is interesting because the player had been playing a ton of hands, as you can see. I decide to go ahead and call it in position. I make the, have the pair still good, and there's a 9 there. He bets 1/3 pot, doesn't really tell me much, but also doesn't really scare me much. Like I said, the player played a ton of hands, 50%, pre-flop raising 33. I only had like 40 hands on him, but that's still 20 out of 40 hands. That's fucking a lot. So it's not like I have 5 hands on him and he played 2, So I decided to just call it because I figured for the most part he's bluffing, but there is a chance I'm up against an overpair. So I decided to call this one. This is rare for me. Normally I would be raising here, but because of my stack, because of his stack, because of the stage of the tournament, it felt good. Turn comes off at 10. He goes ahead and bets 1/3 again. Obviously, this is now looking like bullshit because if you're going to bet 1/3 on the flop with an overpair, you're going to bet 2/3 on the turn, and you're going to bet up the river. He just folds. And I think this is good because I protected my hand. I think at this point, if any card of jack or higher comes out, I'm just kind of in bad shape because he can have all the king queens, ace queen, ace king, ace jack. Any paint card really ruins this hand for me. So I think I got the most value by letting that turn card come off and then just crushing the pot and taking it down. I think is the safest way to play. And I like the way this hand worked out. It's a little subtle thing of not overprotecting my hand on the flop, but realizing when my equity was on its breaking point. And here's the thing. It's not like if a jack came off on the river and he has ace jack, it's not like he's going to know that he's good. But if I just call this 8.76, that puts 17, 23, 43, 44 in the pot, right? So when a jack hits the river, he's going to check it 9 times out of 10, right? And I'm going to have to bet in order now to bluff him. I'm going to have to bet somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 blinds or so. And he may just decide to say fuck it and call. That bet has to be successful way too often, even with the weakest of top pairs, because there are a lot of situations where I don't have it. Like he has to be convinced I have a set when I make that bet on the river, and that's not going to be easy. So I think the turn is the better place to take it down. Ace 10. Go ahead and raise under the gun +1. Oh, this is just a funny hand. I meant to raise to 2.5, and I misclicked it. So I included this in the report. This is more for my editing purposes, but I misclicked it, put in 197 blinds cold, got called by the big blind, and made the nuts versus a set. So yeah, if you can do that, do it, but I don't recommend it. See a player under the gun +1 raises. I 3-bet. Folds back around to him. He just calls. Flop comes off with a queen on it and an ace. This is probably the best flop when you're going to flop a set of queens, because there's, a possibility of an ace who's going to want to protect against, flush draws and whatever. He checks. I decide to go ahead and check back because the flush draw is not likely unless he has exactly the suited ace of clubs. And, I kind of want to get it in. There's already 18 in the pot, so it'll only take 2 streets. Oh, lost the camera. Hang on. Now, having a real problem here with the camera. Hang on one sec, guys. Let me change the thing here. I think that's got it. Let me kill this. Try it again. There we go. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my camera. I think it's bugging out. I might have to get a new one. That sucks. I love this camera. And I just got it like 2 months ago. Cheap piece of crap. So he bets 2/3 pot. At this point, it's fairly obvious that he's got a hand he likes, but I don't think he's willing to go with it. Now, in retrospect, I probably should have just jammed here, honestly, because if he has an ace, he's not going to fold anyway, right? So, he could have a hand like ace queen, ace jack. Ace jack, I guess he can get away from, but the more likely scenario here is that he has some kind of flush draw, which kind of is likely. Because there's 2 flush draws. I mean, I guess he can have sets, but I don't think so. I mean, the ideal scenario is he has, ace king, right? But I really don't think that's what's going on. So I think this is a mistake, regardless of the result. The river comes off a 4. He goes ahead and bets all in. Now, obviously, if I had jammed the turn, I think he is calling in this scenario, but I actually forget what he had. Yeah, he had a flush draw and a pair, so I guess the move would have been to get it in on the turn. I mean, he only had 8 outs, right? But at the same time, I feel like I could have easily lost the fish when this 4 comes off. So, it's like I said, it's one of those things where if he's going to bluff all in on the river, he's going to call all in on the turn. So I should have just jammed it here because he was just playing a wacky hand out of position. Worked out to be a great pot for me. Doubled me up early in the tournament. Awesome. But I think it was a mistake. I definitely should have just jammed the turn. Because, I mean, on the turn, he's got, he puts 13 blinds in. There's, now 13, 26, 27, 35. There's now 45 in the pot. And he's got 28 behind. Yeah, I should just be jamming here. This is kind of ridiculous. So, big mistake by me. Whatever. But I won the hand, luckily enough. All right, let's get on to the cash game hands. So I played 10 NL Zoom. yesterday on stream, which was a lot of fun. I do like cash games. Oh, I can remove this. Or you know what? Let me do this. Let me do this. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. Sorry, I haven't set this up yet because I haven't done many cash game hands. So let me save layout, change HUD profile. Why is it not showing my... Weird. It's not showing my HUD that I want to use, but I mean, I guess it's a cash game, but I don't know. Whatever, I'll have to fix it later. Either way, so this is 6 max. It is the Zoom thing where you just fold and you go immediately to a new table, so it goes very fast. I ended up playing 665 hands, and I won $26, which, you know, that's 2.5 buy-ins, let's say. And let's figure out how I really did. So 2665 or 2632 is what I won. That's 263 blinds, we'll call it, right? Divided by the number of hands, or sorry, divided by the number of 100 hands. So I did 665 hands. So we're going to divide this number by 6.65 hundreds. Means I average 40 big blinds per 100. Now, that sounds great. It's not. Not that I want to win more than that, right? At these stakes, winning 40 big blinds per 100 is a fine result. But the thing of it is, it means I'm playing too low. You shouldn't be winning 40 big blinds per 100. You want to be somewhere around 10 to 15 big blinds per 100 in a game that you're dominating, because when you're only winning that much, it means that your skill gap isn't so wide. Like, my skill gap is huge here, right? But the problem is my bankroll is so low. So I should be playing like 50 NL Zoom. And at 50 NL Zoom, when, you know, you win a big blind, you know, you're talking about a blind is 50 cents versus 10 cents. Winning 12 big blinds per 100 is $6. Winning 39 big blinds per 100 here is $3.90. So the actual amount is lower no matter how much it is. Like, I would have to win 60 big blinds per 100 to catch up to the level I should be playing at, but I just don't have the bankroll to play there. You know, I need another $2,000 in my bankroll to really play that on an L Zoom. The fact of the matter is, I mean, I took a little bit of a beat at the end. I lost a few hands right at the end yesterday, so I probably was up somewhere around 50, 60 big blinds per 100. But it's just not worth the effort and time because the risk is far outweighed, or the reward is far outweighed by the risk. So this isn't a good standard to hold. Don't be too proud of that big blind per 100 because this isn't where I should be doing. That being said, you know, if you got to work a job that pays shit, but it pays enough that you can eat, work the job. And then put a little bit away, put a little bit away, put a little bit away. You know, get yourself a nice suit. One day, get a job interview, get a better job. That's basically what you're doing when you're building a bankroll. You're, you know, playing to build up what you have, and then you give yourself a promotion by going up in level. You know what I'm saying? You go up to 20 NL, and, you know, and then, you know, 50 NL and 100 NL. And eventually, you're sitting there like a CEO, you know, writing your own vacation time. So, just a general analogy. That being said, let's get into it. The play is still fundamentally sound, but the payoff and the skill gap is different. So we're going to go ahead and raise now. These blinds are 10-cent blinds, so you can see this is now money, right? This is actual money that's going on. Oh, what happened to my mouse now? Oh, fucker. Something's going on with this USB drive. Yeah, this is getting annoying. All right, whatever. So yeah, so this is actual money we're playing for. Just think about it as a blind is 10 cents, okay? So I make a raise, get small re-raise on the button, Obviously, we don't play for that because a lot of people do this just to win position and take control of the hand. Player's already on the button. He shouldn't have been doing this. He does go ahead and call. The flop comes off queen high. It goes check, check. That's fine. 4 on the turn. I decide to go ahead and bet 1/3 pot. This I wouldn't normally do. Like, this is not a good move in a tournament. But in a cash game, this is kind of good. Because in a cash game, people will usually just bet for value. He hasn't bet, so I'm trying to make it look like I'm super strong here. And in order to do that, betting big will give up the ghost. Like, if I bet 20, 25, or if I bet 25 plus blinds here, why would I do that ever with ace queen? That's really the question, right? So, god damn it, this is really upsetting me. Sorry, my mouse is just not working today. You know what? I have a way to fix it before the stream starts. Cool. So I think betting 1/3 pot here, approximately, a little bit better than that, is the move because it looks super scary. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and use the keypad. That sucks. And he just does go ahead and fold, and it's pretty rad. Man, my fucking USB drive. You gotta be fucking kidding me, bro. Why is that not working? I don't understand. Anyway, so yeah, just a good little delayed c-bet really is what that was. Okay, this is getting annoying. Hang on a sec, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know what is going on here. Maybe I got a little dust in there. USB connection on the first try? Fucking never, right? The instructions for inserting a USB should be put it in the wrong way, put it in the wrong way, put it in the right way. Because I always turn the fucking thing over 3 times. It's fucking ridiculous. Alright, so you can see that's just a little delayed c-bet. Man, my mouse isn't gonna fucking work. Ain't this a bitch? Alright, let's go on to the next one before the mouse cuts out again. So, king, queen, and the cutoff. Go ahead and raise. Oh my god, this is annoying. Alright, I gotta unplug this. This is fucking driving me crazy. Alright. Go ahead and we get raised on the button. We see the other player calls, so we go ahead and call 2. Still a good price. Queen comes off, probably the best flop for us. Goes check, check, player bets 1/3 pot. When you're betting into 2 players on a draw-heavy board, this bet does play bigger, but it's still improper. He should still be betting half pot or greater with an overpair or ace-queen, because unless you have exactly the ace-queen with the ace of clubs, this isn't a great bet. This is kind of silly. So this is just a positional play. This is kind of like a post-flop squeeze, right? Where nobody bet, now he thinks it's okay to bet. This player calls. I decide to go ahead and check raise, just because this is more than likely a draw over here, and I need to squash that. The button, of course, now is squeezed by his own move, and the other player folds. The check raise here is just so important in cash games. Tournaments, you could definitely use this move, but you'd be kind of flying blind a little bit more, because players are less inclined to make moves like that on that button in tournaments versus how they are in cash games. Just something to be aware of. Let's see here. I go ahead and open, get 3-bet on the button yet again. I decide to call, flop the open-ended straight flush royal draw. That's pretty good. And it's a scenario where my opponent's likely to have something. So I decide to check. He, of course, bets. This would be improper, except for the fact that I can hit an ace, a 9, or spade to most likely have the best hand. Now, granted, obviously, the ace of spades can be out there, but what ace is 3-betting me on the button? Is ace 9 of spades 3-betting me on the button? I don't think so. And not a lot of players are 3-betting suited aces pre-flop that aren't premium, so ace queen, ace jack, ace king, things like that. Even ace jack doesn't 3-bet the button much. Ace queen does for sure. So I have all those hands, right? So what's more likely when this big bet comes off? Well, the most likely thing is that the player just has ace king, right? Just because those cards are all available, he would want to stop the draw. This particular one, he'd have to bet pretty fucking huge because I know my pot odds are through the roof, and there are instances where I'm gonna super cooler him. So he'd have to bet pretty big. I think 16 blinds here or 17 is more proper. Just like saying, look, man, I got the ace king. If you want to go, let's go. Now, the fact of the matter is, if he had bet that big, I probably would have just re-raised, and then we would have gotten it in. But that being said, and I don't run it twice, by the way. That being said, I think when he makes this bet, I'm not convinced that he's fully into the pot. So he could still be bluffing, right? And when he's bluffing here, it gives me another opportunity when I don't make my hand to take the pot away. I think I'm better just calling. Because I could have king queen here and not know where he's at, right? Then if he bets small with ace queen, and then the turn comes off nothing and the river comes off nothing, and we go check, check, turn, and I lead the river, well, he'd have to give up ace queen. And if I just missed, and I have fucking queen high, I just won the pot for no reason. So it leaves my options open. So I call, make the flush on the turn, best scenario. There's 40 blinds in the pot. I want it all. He checks after I check. River comes off a king. I decide to check it. And this is usually something I would only ever do in tournaments, but I felt like because it was the king, this player's never going to fold. It's an interesting thing. In a tournament, this isn't a great move because when you check here and raise, you only get called by hands that beat you. A king usually will not call you on this river, ever, in a tournament, because they know you can see the fucking board. How is ace king ever good here when you're check raised, especially when you're check raised big? And in a tournament, you're going to check raise even bigger than I did here. So you're going to see. He bets 22, which is half pot. I triple it. I go up to fucking, a full pot bet. And it costs him now 48 to call to win. He should know he's not going to win here often enough with ace king to ever call this. In a tournament, you wouldn't really do this with a flush because somebody could easily have pocket tens, pocket fours, king 10, hands that 3-betting pre-flop might have been speculative, but 6-handed it could happen. Like if this was that 6-max hyper turbo, there's absolutely no fucking way I would have check raised this. I would have led the turn and then checked the river, let him bet huge, and then called off. I never would have checked the turn, check raise the river. But in a cash game, because it's just money and it's not your emotional investment in the tournament, it's not your tournament life, all those stupid things people talk about, this is a perfect spot to check raise. Absolutely 100% perfect. So I went ahead and did it, and it worked, and he had exactly what we needed him to have, ace king. And here's the thing, ace king even with the ace of spades, if he didn't have the ace of spades in his hand, it makes a greater case for him calling, right? Because I could have just the ace of spades in my hand with like ace queen offsuit with the ace of spades. That makes more bluffs in my hand. When he's holding the ace of spades, then then I must have something. How am I bluffing without at least the ace of spades in my hand on this board? So his call is just really bad. I'm not insulting the player. I'm just saying if you look at things in complete narrative, you see that this is a bad play. Like if he had the ace king, without the ace of spades, I could take this bluffing line every day of the week. And so he has to call me, but I think he just wanted to justify the call way too hard in his own head. So that was a nice pot. That was a 80 big blind pot, profit. So pretty good. Let's see here. We see a limp out of first. Okay. People limp in cash games. 6-handed. Okay. Flop comes off with a flush. I check, player bets 1. Okay. I decide to call the ace on the turn. There's a check. He bets 2.2. Now this is funny to me because this player's range is kind of wide open, and now he's betting with the ace on the board. He could have a suited ace, right? He could just have me crushed with the suited ace of clubs, but obviously I'm not folding. River comes off a 9. I decide to check it. He leads now 2/3 pot, and you see his bets went pretty similar. 1/3, 2/3, 2/3. It was kind of like bam, bam, bam. So I kind of felt maybe he had some kind of weird 2-pair, which was interesting. So in my mind, he had a suited ace, but it wasn't the ace of clubs. He had like the suited ace of diamonds, with a 4 or a deuce, or the suited, ace of spades, 4 deuce. Could even have 10-9, honestly. All those hands kind of went through my head. So I went for the value play of 4xing his bet. And this was more than pot. This was much bigger than it should have been. He then re-raised me. And I was like, whoa, what just happened here? And I thought about it for a minute, and it was like, well, he could still have that suited ace, but I really didn't feel like it, because coming out of first, I think you would raise a suited ace, even if it's a shitty one, playing six-handed. So I didn't feel like I was beat too often, because it would have to be the suited king or queen, and why would those hands bet the flop? You know what I'm saying? Like, why wouldn't you just take a free turn and then bet? So it kind of didn't make a lot of sense to me. Of course, that didn't all matter, because it only cost me 17 blinds to call, $1.70 to win whatever's in this pot after I call 90, so to win $9. So this bluff, this bet, if it is a bluff, doesn't have to work much, and my call doesn't have to win much. So the odds are right for the call. And amazingly, this motherfucker had a flush. If I had thought he could have had that many lower flushes, I maybe would have raised. And I was thinking about it. If he can't have a suited king or queen here and only the suited ace, then I probably should be raising. Like, when he goes for 40, I should probably just put him in, because he would have called, right? With 90 in the middle, he would have called off the last 50, and it's highly unlikely he has the suited ace. Now, that being said, it is a cash game. You know what I'm saying? And the truth of the matter is, I profited 40 blinds. So in the end, the result is great. It's more than I should have gotten. You know what I'm saying? By the method that I played it. His re-raise is kind of bad, because when I check raise, right, his lead was $6. I raised to 24. He went back to 40. Like, what are you doing? Like, with a 7 high flush, what hand am I raising you with that I can then call that bet and lose to you? Like, 3, 5, or 3, 6 of clubs? Like, that's the hand that I can call with? That, like, even the straight can't really call after that. You know what I'm saying? If you check raise 3-5 for some reason on the river here without the flush. So this is just a poor play from a player who doesn't understand other people have flushes too. But, won it. So that's good for me. It's hard because at the lower levels, it's like that player did everything he could to try to give me all his chips, and I was too smart to take them. That's how it worked out. I'm too experienced a player to bust him. Other players on the table would have just went like, well, it's a jack high flush. Bang! And they would have gotten it in, and they would have gotten that last $5. I play too well for that. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those weird situations. See a raise out of first. It's kind of a weird raise, 2.8. This isn't a tournament, bro. You should be going 3 or 2.5, whatever your standardized bet is. So the bet seemed kind of weird to me. It goes check, check, flop. I decide to bet third on the turn. And I'm doing the third turn bet here in cash games. You're never going to see me do this in a tournament, hardly ever, as a bluff. Because what I'm doing is I'm setting up a 2-street bluff. Usually for me to make this bet, there has to be 3 players in the pot, me and 2 other people, because I'm squeezing them next to each other with a small bet. But I thought, I'm probably going to have to fire twice here. So why don't I go ahead and make it look like I have a 6? So I decided to bet small. He does call. 7 on the river. The good thing about that card is there's a lot of 6s that I would defend with that now have filled up. 8-6, 6-9, 6-7, hands like pocket 8s. I could have 9-10. I could have 8-10. I could have 6-10. I could have all these fucking hands. I could even have 6-5 and have made the bottom end of the straight, right? Like, there's a ton going on here. So this isn't an easy one for ace high to call. So I go ahead and make the reasonable value bet, and he does fold. And this kind of just looks like a guy who had ace high that, maybe ace queen or something, or ace king, and just nothing really going on, and we didn't want to lose it in a showdown. Now, granted, the king queen's going to win a lot, but not enough versus a first position opener. If he'd opened from the button, we might have gone check down, because he could just have, I don't know, queen jack, and then my king high is good. But when he's raising out of first, I need to bluff him off. pocket jacks. Go ahead and raise. See a call on the button. Flop the overpair. Go ahead and make the reasonable c-bet. This is a little bit bigger than normal. You know, cash game sizes are different. Looking back, I probably want to bet more here. I probably want to bet like an extra half blind, like 4.25 or something like that. But I think it's fine. He does call. Ace on the turn's not great for me. Oh, this is the hand I was thinking of, where I checked it on the turn. So I checked the turn. He bets 7 big blinds, which is now half pot. This doesn't seem right to me, because what is he calling me with on the flop that is good enough to call that now the ace improves? Well, the suited ace, right? The suited ace. Cool. But that's kind of specific. Other hands are, because queens, kings, and aces would have 3-bet me pre-flop, right? On the button? Fuck yeah. So, you know, what's left? Sets? Okay. But even a set bet's bigger here, right? Because now there's an ace on the board. If I do have the suited ace, I'm willing to get all the money in. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what hand is this? So to me, this could be 10s, 8s, 7s. It could be all those. You know what I'm saying? 7's not so likely, but 10's for sure. Because 10's might not know where he's at. Maybe 8's is the best guess, I thought at the time. Or 7's, I guess, is the same thing. Because, you know, there is an overcard. Some players don't realize that when a player raises pre-flop, if this board had come out 3, 6, 7, and you have 2 8s in your hand, and I c-bet it, a lot of players are going to raise there. But when that same situation comes up and a 9 hits, they're going to go, there's an overcard out there. I better just call. The fuck are you talking about? What 9s do I have that aren't a pair that are raising pre-flop? Specifically, king 9, ace 9. That's it. But you're talking about rare instances. 10, 9, I guess. But even then, you should be raising. And if I re-raise you, you can go, well, these 8s are no good. And it doesn't matter what the fuck I have, because I have made it stunningly clear. It's a cash game. Nobody's you know, 3-betting the flop as a bluff in a low-stakes cash game. So getting that thought out of your head is a big step towards your own development. And he doesn't have that many fucking chips left. Like, look at this. He's got $1.90 behind, right? The average stack is, you know, $12, $13. So I decided to just call it. When the ace hits the river, man, the jig is up, sir. You have no ace. I'm not giving him credit for an ace ever, and he just doesn't have enough chips. What's the best move to get all the money in the pot? Check to him and allow the bluffer to continue bluffing. Cool. He does that, and I call king 8. What? You just wacky shit you see at smaller stakes. Queen 9. Well, here's a 9 I'm going to raise pre-flop. All right. Get 3-bet on the button. You got to remember, all these hands, it's all different players. And getting moved to a new table every hand. So it's not the same guy. Flop the strizzly nizzly. Player bets micro. So I decided to just call it because he obviously doesn't have much. 7 on the turn is kind of gross. Kind of kills my action, right? It goes check, check, which to me is like, okay, well, maybe he doesn't have a 9. You know, he doesn't have a 9, so I'm kind of crushing here. King on the river is kind of weird because a backdoor flush gets there. Also, ace-queen makes a straight, but 3-betting ace-queen on the button, believe it or not, in these low stakes, not so common, you know? So I decided to go ahead and lead big because I feel like I can't really get raised here by much. The player does call it because, like I say, I feel like he had something worth it. Like, he could have definitely had ace-king, spiked the king, and been like, oh, this guy's trying to bluff me now. Like, if he has the ace-king, right, with the ace of spades in his hand, he could be like, oh, I'm picking off this bluff all day. How do you ever have ace-queen? Even though that's a double gutter, and I definitely would have played it this way. Ace-king, no spades. So pure bluff on the flop. 3-bet pre-flop made sense. Checks the turn. And, yeah, just pays me all the fucking way off. And it's important to bet there because if I check, he's not going to bet. This is a scenario where he's not going to bet it because of the 4-card straight and the king on board, you know, and the spades on board. But I can fucking bet it, and he has to pay it in his mind. In truth, I'm folding this automatically. When the best card for your hand comes out and the other guy's betting into you, it's probably not a great scenario. unless you have the monster. I mean, when you have one pair, it's probably not a great scenario. Ace 4. See a raise, decide to go ahead and call it. Goes check, player bets micro again. This is just, these bets don't mean anything. They don't define a hand. So I call, it goes check, check. River comes off a 4. And the funny part is, I was going to bluff. I was totally going to bluff here. But I didn't think he had a king. So when the 4 comes off, I'm like, well, I kind of just win a lot. Like, why do I need to bluff here? Like, if he has a pair of 8s or 7s or something, or 10s or whatever, he's not going to fold. So my hand is now a bluff catcher. So why not check and see if he bluffs, and maybe I can call it, right? Unless he bets something ridiculous, and the board's super scary, right? So he can't really do that because I could have anything. So I check. He does bet 3/4 pot, which I can now call. But if I bet and he raises, I can't call that. So this worked out perfectly, I thought. And as you can see, I didn't need to bluff. If the river had come off anything but something that paired my hand, I would have bluffed. You know what I'm saying? It was a total free roll for me because even if a 6 comes off, he's not calling the river. There's just no fucking way. Not with those kings out there. So this was a total free roll situation. And I love that I recognized the check to get him to bluff and make an extra, 7.5 blinds. Doesn't sound like much, but those things add up. Get raised, or I raise, player 3 bets to monster. This is something you're going to see at low stakes cash games. This is a 1-2 play. If this was a 1-2 game and I made it $5, that means somebody in the small blind would have made it $24. That's what this is. 2.5 blinds at 1-2 is a $5 raise. And then it folds to the small blind 6-handed, and he makes it $24. That's what that is. To me, it's a big pair. So am I getting the immediate odds I need? No. I need to call 9.5 to win. But here's the thing. Add his stack in, I am. Because I'm going to get his whole fucking stack when I flop a 3. I know that, right? So I have to call, what is that, 9.5 blinds. And there's 12 in the middle right now, 14.5, 15.5 in the middle right now. So I'm only getting 1.5 to 1. But he still has enough behind, and I have enough to cover it, that it makes up the difference. So I can absolutely call here. This is a perfect expected value scenario. Even though the raise is so big, when I hit it, I'm going to crush him, right? Because he's not going to fold easily. Unless he has exactly pocket jacks and an overcard and my fucking set comes off, I'm going to get paid here. So knowing that, I call. I make the 3. Player now bets out 15 blinds. Not unreasonable, but kind of weird. If you made that big a bet pre-flop, now you're down betting. To me, this just screams aces. So I go ahead and raise it right here on the jump. Only because I didn't want an ace of clubs to come off, or a club to come off, and then him to be free rolling the flush from there. I wanted to get in as much money as possible when I felt like I was as ahead as possible. He thought about it for a really long time, and then he called it. The 4 comes on the turn. He checks, and of course we just ram a jam. He obviously can't fold now. He goes ahead and calls. That was a very reluctant call, though, by the way. And had just the old pocket asses and played him like an ass. That's the thing. You re-raise that much pre-flop, you have told me you're going to go broke here. So this is a horrible, 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 horrible raise pre-flop. You could have just made it 8 or 10 big blinds would have been proper. 10. He made it, or no, not 10. What would have been 9 big blinds. He added so much extra to it. It was insane. You could even make a case for 3-betting smaller because it's a cash game. You know what I'm saying? You could make it 8 big blinds. But he just blasted off. And he has no ability to fold, and this is what you see at the small stakes. So, really good hands. Yeah, that was the last of them. Let's see. Oh, wow, we've been going a while. Let's go through a section here really quickly, and then I'll see how long that takes and what I want to do. So let me mute that, and let me turn this sound on. There we go. Wow, has desktop audio been on the whole time? Wow. If it has, there's been an echo the whole fucking time, and I'm sorry. Jesus. But nobody complains, so maybe not.
Now let's discuss when someone raises, you call, and then someone yet to act 3 bets. This is referred to as a squeeze. When there's a raise and a call, and someone re-raises, that is a squeeze because, remember, essentially, the caller, the player in the middle, should be capped, which means they only have to worry about the initial raiser having a strong hand. So, in general, you want to proceed cautiously, but always ask yourself, what are the ranges at play? Remember, the 3-better is the most important range to consider because usually they are going to have the strongest range. Some players will only 3-bet over raise and a call with the absolute best hand.
I think I did this section yesterday. What the fuck is going on here? Oh, god damn it. Facing a raise and a call. Yeah, we did do that yesterday. So when you call and get 3-bet, that's what we're moving on to.
Now let's discuss when someone raises, you call, and then someone yet to act 3 bets. This is referred to as a squeeze. When there's a raise and a call, and someone re-raises, that is a squeeze because...
What the hell's going on here? Oh, I'm confusing them because it's when a pre-flop raise and a call. So I feel like we did do this yesterday, though. All right, well, fuck it. Can't hurt me. Let's do it again. If I did it yesterday, fuck it.
Now let's discuss when someone raises, you call, and then someone yet to act 3 bets. This is referred to as a squeeze. When there's a raise and a call, and someone re-raises, that is a squeeze because, remember, essentially, the caller, the player in the middle, should be capped, which means they only have to worry about the initial raiser having a strong hand. So, in general, you want to proceed cautiously, but always ask yourself, what are the ranges at play? Remember, the 3-better is the most important range to consider because usually they are going to have the strongest range. Some players will only 3-bet over raise and a call with the absolute best hands, where some players will do it really, really wide because they don't care. They're just throw in some money and see what happens. So definitely consider who you are against. So a few factors that will increase your ability to call. When you're facing more players, you usually get to call a little bit wider, assuming your hand is a strong implied odds hand. If it is just a high card hand, like ace jack offsuit, it would much prefer to be heads up. So realize that the big card hands would much prefer to be in a heads up pot. The suited connected hands, small pairs, etc., would much prefer to be in a multi-way pot because that will give them the proper implied odds or close enough to the proper implied odds. If you are closing the action, you usually should be calling more often. What I mean by closing the action is you want to be the last person to act. If you're the last person to act, no one yet to act can surprise you by re-raising. Every once in a while, you'll see a spot where someone raises, someone calls, someone 3-bets, someone calls, and then the player who initially called the raise re-raises. That's referred to as a back raise. After you took a passive action by just calling and then you re-raise, that's referred to as a back raise. And that completely wrecks the player who called the 3-bet, right? Because they put in 7 big blinds or something like that, and now they have to fold. So closing the action usually allows you to play slightly wider than when you're not closing the action. If you are the first caller and there's like 4 callers yet to act, you actually should proceed really tightly because you may get back raised by any of those 4 players. It's not going to happen very often, but it will happen sometimes. Whenever you're getting better pot odds, you call more often. When you're getting worse pot odds, you do not. So let's take a look at an example. Here we have a tricky limper. We have a raise to 2.5 big blinds. We have a call. This is a situation where I would call virtually every time with the pocket 5s. If there was no limper, I would still call with the pocket 5s. I'm never folding because I think the tricky limper may re-raise some portion of the time. If that happens, such is life. If I could tell, I can't even talk.
Yeah, totally did this one yesterday. Screw this. I've now gone through this thing in my life like 8 times. So there you go. Also, fixed the mouse. Found a little USB hub. Nice. That makes me very happy, actually. And it's a very cool little... I want to show it, but I don't have any way to... Can I show this thing? It's like a... it's made for a laptop, which my computer is, but I was surprised it had a USB 2.0. It's this little thing. I don't know if you can see that. You can't really see that. I don't want to unplug it. There. It's like a little. I don't want to move the camera. This is very frustrating. I can't show it to you, but it's like a little switchboard thing that has 4 USB plugs on it. I can turn them on and turn them off as I like, and made me very happy that it works right now. And yeah, very happy about that. Sorry, just very fascinated with technology at the moment. It's pretty awesome. All right, facing a pre-flop raise and a 3-bet. So somebody raises, somebody 3-bets. Now you're there. Should you call, fold, or 4-bet?
Let's discuss the situation when you are facing a raise and a 3-bet before the action gets to you. So realize that you want to be proceeding very, 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 very cautiously. And that's because, well, the raiser and the 3-better both usually have decently strong ranges. So you should find that you should have no cold calling range. Remember, when you have fewer than 75 big blinds, you should not be cold calling, which implies whenever you have 40 big blinds or fewer, you should also not be cold calling. So we are either all in or we are folding.
So now that means you have to think about the context of what he says here. What's going on, Pocket? I've been going for an hour and nobody said anything, so I appreciate it, my man. But you got to understand what he's saying here. Raise and a re-raise at less than 75 blinds. Okay, so if you want to take the extreme, when you have 70 blinds and there's a raise to 2 and a re-raise to 7, you really shouldn't have a calling range. You should be either 3-betting or folding, right? So if you have 70 blinds, somebody makes it, well, let's say it's early, right? Because everybody's going to have a lot of blinds. It's 75 big blinds effective. Somebody makes it 3 big blinds. The next guy makes it, 10 big blinds, right? Your raise is going to be to 30 big blinds. You've got more than a third of your stack in. Just jam it. I know it sounds ridiculous to go from 3 to 10 to 70, but that's the level you want to be at. And this is why you get in, aces, kings, queens, ace, king suited pre-flop early in a tournament a lot because of these situations. Because you'll see players who are like, I have 60 blinds. I can't 3-bet this thing to 25 or 30 because I'm just going to be committed anyway. So you just put it all in. If you have that in your head that you have no calling range when this happens at less than 75 blinds, it's going to save you so much fucking anguish. It's ridiculous. Like, pocket pairs suck in this situation unless you're willing to get all the money in.
When it goes raise and then 3-bet before us. And that's because we are going to get 4-bet by the initial raiser often enough to the point that it completely kills any implied odds we may have from our hand. And realize when we have something like 50 big blinds, we're not getting great implied odds anyway, because usually we'll be getting about 8-1, and you know that the pairs need at least 10-1, and the suited connectors need at least 20-1, and we are nowhere near that. So you want to be playing exceptionally tight. Whenever you are facing a raise and a 3-bet before you, if they are from early position, you probably only want to be getting all in with something like pocket queens or better for 40 big blinds. If they're in later positions, that's where you can start getting a little bit looser if you know that the initial raisers ranges are also loose, but that will rarely be the case. And you should pretty much not have a 4-bet bluffing range. If you are bluffing, you're bluffing with something like ace-queen suited or ace-king offsuit or pocket tens. Those effectively become your bluffs because you're just jamming with a very, very premium linear range. So let's take a look at an example. Here we have a raise and a 3-bet. So we have under the gun +1 raise, low jack 3-bet. In this scenario with ace-king of spades, I think it's probably good enough to get all in. Notice we're not against 2 early position players at a 9 or 10-handed table. We're against, second and third position, but at an 8-handed table. So these are basically like 2 middle position players. In this scenario, I think ace-king suited is going to be just good enough to jam it in. If I had ace-king offsuit, I would also jam it in. And if I had queens, I would jam in. But if I had jacks at this point, I would fold. If I had ace-queen suited, I would probably fold. Although, if you wanted to bluff that all in, I think that's reasonable. Ace-queen offsuit, I would definitely fold. So that's what I'm doing in this scenario. If these raises were from under the gun and under the gun +1 at a 10-handed table, I think ace-king suited is probably just a fold here, assuming they're playing reasonably. If the raise and the 3-bet were from the cutoff and the button, especially if I knew those players to be very aggressive, that's where you can consider bluffing a little bit wider with stuff like ace-jack suited or ace-queen offsuit or pocket nines, right? But really, in this scenario you see, I'm talking about getting it in with only very, very premium hands.
Funny scenario. When I was at the South Point playing live before the Delta variant kicked up into high gear again and the regulations kicked up, I was in that exact scenario, and I remembered that exact sentence. I was in the small blind with pocket nines. The players in the cutoff and the button were very, very loose, aggressive players. I had them both covered. The effective stack was 40 big blinds, right? I think I had like 50. It was close. And we were all very deep stacked, right? And it comes to me, and I remembered this sentence and then looked down and saw pocket nines and went, this is it. This is the perfect scenario. So I looked over at the guy, and I remember it hilariously. The first guy who raised, I went, huh. And then I looked over at him, and I had been smacking him around. And I had position. And what are you going to do? And he looked at me, and he went, peace, man. And I went, peace? And he goes, yeah, man, let's keep it peaceful. And I go, good idea. And I went like that, took my 2 fingers, put them behind my stack, and shoved all in. and the whole table fucking died laughing. And I went, peace. Just put it in and just did that to him. And then sat there with a big fucking smile on my face. And it folds all the way around. And it gets back to him. He hems and haws for a really long time. And then he looks at the dealer and says, this is a fold. Can we keep the cards to the side? And she goes, sure. The next guy goes, well, I fold. And he rolls over king, queen offsuit. And everybody at the table kind of goes, bah, you got caught in a move. It goes back to the first guy. And he goes, will you show me if I show? And I go, I have absolutely no desire to show you my hand. And he goes, well, I want to show you. And I go, all right, you can show me. And he rolls over pocket jacks. And I kick my cards into the muck, and I go, that's usually a good fold. And he goes, fuck. And he never saw him, and he was like, and then over the course of the next like 30 minutes, they never stopped talking about that hand. And he goes, what do you mean that's usually a good fold? And I go, well, when there's a raise and a 3-bet and somebody jams on you and you have pocket jacks, depending on what you know about the player, it's usually a good fold. And then the debate started, and somebody said something like, yeah, but if the player who's jamming is a maniac, and I go, well, am I a maniac? I've only shown you aces, kings, ace, king, queens, ace, queen. What did I have? Pocket tens that made a set about an hour ago. I had pocket deuces that made quads. And I went through all the hands. And the guy goes, I have no idea what you had, and I'm never going to feel good about that hand. And I go, do you really want to know? And he goes, yeah. And I go, I will tell you honestly if you really want to know. He goes, yeah. I go, I had pocket eights. And he goes, I go, I had pocket nines. And he goes, no, you didn't. You're a fucking liar. And that was the end of the discussion. It was so hilarious. It was a really great scenario. But I remembered that sentence where he said, this is where you can start bluffing all in versus the late loose aggressive players. It was really a great move. And my cards really didn't matter. The only reason why nines was the bottom of it was because I needed to have something that could fade a race. Because if that guy had ace king, he calls all day. But jacks, he folded, which is hilarious because I'm in a worse position versus the jacks, right?
Not ever bluffing with like ace 3 suited in this scenario unless I just know my opponents are absurd. And that's because you have so many more better hands to use that also have better blockers. You may ask, what about like king queen? If it goes cutoff raise, button 3-bet, and I know they're both exceptionally loose, I suppose king queen suited could be jammed. And you may say, does it really matter if you're suited or not? Aren't you just relying on fold equity here? The answer is no. You actually do want your hand to be suited because you are going to get called some portion of the time, and that adds a decent amount of equity to your hand.
It adds an extra about 9 to 13% based on whether or not they're holding one of your cards. So being suited is huge.
So in this scenario, when it goes raise 3-bet before the action gets to you, you really should be very, very tight. Do not think you want to be running big bluffs in this spot because, well, when they fail, you're out of the tournament. And when they succeed, you win a decent pot, but I think you're going to find that most people who 3-bet in most tournaments, especially when they're earlier middle position 3-betters, they just have a good hand. And if you're jamming into a good hand, they're going to call adequately enough, because kind of like I've alluded to throughout this masterclass a few times, most people just aren't 3-betting enough. And if they aren't 3-betting enough, they're going to be able to easily call when you do 4-bet, because their 3-betting range contains too few bluffs. So my best advice in these scenarios is play pretty straightforwardly. Aces, kings, queens is basically always good enough to get it in for 40 big blinds. Ace, king suited is as well. Ace, king offsuit, if it's against an early position raise and 3-bet, you can consider folding, but in most other scenarios it's fine. And then pocket jacks is good enough against middle position raisers and late position 3-betters. But you got to be snug. You'll find that these spots are very, very high risk, and you really just don't want to be jamming here too incredibly wide. So anyway, in this scenario, what happens? I did rip it in. Low jack calls. That's not good. And he has pocket kings. It's a good flop, though. We're going to win on that flop. Not that that matters. Realize in these scenarios, by the way, you may think, oh, I jammed with ace king and I got it in against kings and I won. That's great. Actually, no. In this scenario, we just lost a bunch of equity.
Yep.
That said, ace king suit is good enough to get it in. Realize you are going to run into the top of your opponent's range sometimes when you do jam in these spots, and that's okay. But if it does turn out in your games, especially if you're playing small stakes games against weaker players, if they just always show up with aces or kings or queens or ace king when they 3-bet, then you want to be jamming really, really, really tight.
Yeah, this specific scenario, when there was a raise in a under the gun +1 scenario and low jack, even though it's 8-handed because it is low jack, I don't think I'm jamming the ace king suit. I mean, I know it seems super snug, but at I'm talking about like playing that same tournament at the South Point, I would have probably just folded the ace king suited, because one of these motherfuckers has got some monster pair. My best case scenario is up against queens, and I think that's the rarest. I think the unusual thing that happened here is that I got dealt an ace or a king, not that they have aces or kings when that betting scenario happens. So I'm probably folding this one at the South Point in that specific tournament. Now, granted, if I'm at Caesars and it's fucking Saturday afternoon and it's a bunch of tourists, yeah, I'm going to rip it all fucking day. But these are guys who are, at the South Point, who are planted to the chair, 50-plus age range, been playing the same way for 30 years, still playing $60 daily tournaments, and just never having any good luck unless they have good luck. Meaning, they get the hands that they need that they can play, but these guys are just fucking rocks for the most part. There are a couple of wild ones, but usually they fizzle. But yeah, so, and that concept of if players don't 3-bet enough, so you should be 4-betting more, doesn't fly. It's actually the opposite. So, like, there's a good concept of people don't bluff the river enough. Since that's the case, that's versus population. Since population does not bluff the river enough, this is something that has won me more pots in the last year than any other concept that I grasped about a year and a half ago. The population does not bluff river enough. That's something Assassinato says quite a bit. And I remembered that and realized it, studied it, and realized, oh, then I should be bluffing river more. Because since nobody bluffs the river, if you're the guy bluffing the river, you're going to get a lot of folds. Like a lot of these check-check scenarios where you would lose to a pair, right, that couldn't call a bet. You should be betting all those. So I took that one to heart. This is the other end of the coin. Population doesn't 3-bet enough pre-flop. So you should 4-bet more. Doesn't work. Because population is strongest pre-flop. People know what to do more towards the start of a hand than the end of a hand. They know when they look at their cards, if they like the hand. Then they look at their position, and they know if they like their position. And then they look at the action ahead of them, and they know if they like the action. Then they decide if they want to raise, re-raise, fold, whatever. After that point, most people start to fall off in knowledge very quickly. What do I do when every combination of flop comes out versus my hand? Most people don't have that in their arsenal. There's about 15 or 20 different combinations of flops that'll come out versus your specific hand that you can memorize for reference. Monotone, paired, straight E boards, flush E boards, certain pairs that are double paired, certain kind of boards that could make double gutters, or top 2 pair or sets for the other player. And people's knowledge drops off sharply. But then there's some that still feel comfortable. So cool. Then you get to the turn. Now they really don't know what, I'm saying? And it just goes further and further. So by the time people get to the river, because they're in those situations less, The only way to learn those situations better is to study them, because we're not all going to get to the river with a pair of aces on a three flush board with 4 straight cards versus an opponent who's loose aggressive, who 4-bet us pre-flop that we just called to trap at the aces. We don't have the suit of the ace on the board. We're not going to get in this situation often enough in our lifetime to know how to deal with it confidently. So what you do is you create this situation in a study environment, go back and look at it and drill it till you know, on the rare occasion that I do get in this semi-common spot, I'll know what to do. You know what I'm saying? That's how you study poker, is preparing for when you see something the next time you see it. Don't study things that are so specific, because they're not worth it. They're not worth your time. But there are situations like this that are absolutely worth it. All right, let's do the quiz here. Everyone folds to a loose aggressive player in the cutoff who raises to 3.5 big blinds out of his 45 big blind effective stack. A normal player 3-bets the button to 7 big blinds with 10-10 in the small blind. 45 big blinds with 10-10. This is kind of the scenario. And what we're doing is the loose aggressive player opened the action, and now we're going to squeeze the normal player. So I got to say, if you're going to play this hand, it's kind of a jam or fold. I probably like a jam here. Yeah. Great hand to 4-bet jam. High equity, cannot be played as profitably by calling versus shallow stacks. And it's one of those ones where it's too good to fold, but not good enough to 3-bet. So your only option is to jam, but not good enough to call. Like if you had pocket queens here, you could actually call, because you're going to want the original raiser to do something stupid, or maybe he folds and then you're heads up with the other guy, acting first. You could maybe call with pocket queens. Absolutely, you could call with pocket kings. Hands like that. But your hand's not strong enough to call, and it's too strong to fold. So your only option left is to go all in, because a 3-bet is just pointless. If you 3-bet, you're committing yourself to the pot. Everyone folds to an overly tight passive player in the cutoff to raise it to 2.5. Another tight player 3-bets on the button with 7 big blinds. You're in the small blind with 7-7. Yeah, that's going to be a fold from me, dog. They're tighter range. They're just going to have you crushed. And there's not enough money. If you all had 100 blinds, then yeah, you could call it, and the initial raiser is usually just going to call. Even if they 3-bet, if the initial raiser doesn't, or if the 3-better doesn't 4-bet, if the initial raiser 4-bets and he makes it 20 big blinds, you've already called 7. If the 3-better only calls that, you can actually call 13 blinds to win 60 blinds immediately, and then you have 80 blinds behind. You know what I'm saying? And they both have at least 80. If you get one of them, you got 140 blinds. You can call 13 blinds to win 140, because you're getting more than 10-1. So in that scenario, yes, if you have 100 blinds, it's much different. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about 45 blinds. I'm going to mark this as complete. Move on to the next one.
Now let's discuss when you are facing a pre-flop 4-bet, when you have between 35 and 60 big blinds. And there are 2 ways this can happen. The first is when someone raises, someone 3-bets, and someone 4-bets. Usually, the initial raiser is going to be from one of the earlier positions. Someone's going to 3-bet them, which should be a very strong range. Someone else is 4-betting them. That should be an incredibly strong range. So if it goes raise, 3-bet, 4-bet before it's your turn, you should fold pretty much everything. You really only want to be getting it in with pocket aces and pocket kings. And even then, kings is close, because you should be against 3 very, very strong ranges. But that scenario is not going to happen very often at all. The most common way this is going to occur is when someone raises, you 3-bet them, everyone else folds, and then they 4-bet you. So this is going to be a little bit different than when we were deeper stacked, when we had more than 60 big blinds, because now the 4-bet you're going to be facing is going to be all in. Because think about it. Say someone raises to 2.5 big blinds, you make it 7 big blinds. They're usually not going to make it 18 or 20 big blinds out of their 40-ish big blind stack, because they have half their chips in the pot at that point. So usually they're going to be all in. So that scenario is different than when you are deeper stacked, because when you're deeper stacked, you're going to be facing a smaller 4-bet usually. Usually they're going to be making it 18 big blinds, so you're still getting reasonable pot odds to call, but there's going to be more money left to bet after the flop. So in this scenario, you're usually going to be getting worse pot odds to call the all-in because they're making it 40 big blinds instead of 18 or 20, but there's no more money left to bet after the flop. Okay, so in this scenario, when
I think I 3-bet too big. At around 35 to 60 big blinds, I think I 3-bet too big. Now that I'm thinking about it. Because typically I'm seeing a 2.5 blind open, right, at that stage, if it's early in the tournament, right, or mid-level. And I think most of the time I'm 3-betting to like 8 or 9, usually 9. Unless I'm out of, well, I mean, if I'm out of position, that's fine. You can go 10 in the small blind. But on the button, I should be going like 7, right? Yeah, I'm kind of taking away some play from myself there. I got to analyze that. But I think I just realized I'm 3-betting way too big. Which is fine to do with your good hands, but with my speculators and my 3-better bluffers like King Queen and Ace Queen and you know, pocket nines, and even the rare instance on the button of 9-10 suited or 10 jack suited, you know, or 9-10 suited specifically, actually. Yeah, I think I'm 3-betting too big. That could be a very big leak I'm gonna have to look at. Yeah, that just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks there. So I'm gonna look at that one.
whenever you are facing a 4-bet, you do need to proceed very cautiously. I think you're going to find that when most people 4-bet in most tournaments, unless they are overly loose and overly aggressive, they're usually just going to have a very, very, very strong range. Okay? As we say here, against 2 players, when it goes raise 3-bet, 4-bet, you usually want to have aces and kings. Queens and ace king suited can be fine if the raisers are from later position, but you really can never be looser than queens and aces and kings. So let's take a look at the standard example. Hijack raises to 2.5 big blinds. We 3-bet ace queen to 7.5 big blinds from the button, and then the hijack 4-bets all in. What should we do? Well, compared to the previous example, where you were deeper stacked, I said you should fold against the vast majority of players. But here, you're going to find it depends entirely on your opponent's range, and it's actually just a straight math problem. What we need to do is we want to figure out our pot odds and then see how much equity we have with our hand compared to our opponent's all-in range. So let's figure out our pot odds. We've already put in 7.5 big blinds, so we have to call 32.5 big blinds more out of our 40 big blind stack. Obviously, if you're deeper stacked, you're going to have to call more, right? If you're shorter stacked, you're going to be calling less. So let's say we have to call 32.5 big blinds divided by the total pot we're trying to win, which in this case will be our opponent's 40, our 40, the small blind, the big blind, and ante. So that's 82.5 equals. So in this scenario, we need 39% equity to break even. But remember, you don't want to break even, you want to profit. So let's say we want to win, I don't know, 41% of the time to justify calling this all in. Okay? So what we do now is we go over here and enter a range for our opponent. Which hands do you think your opponent's ripping it all in with for 40 big blinds?
I'm going to say pocket eights plus, suited aces down to ace jack suited, ace king, ace queen, offsuit, king queen suited. I'm sure there's more to this. I don't know if he has bluff range. A lot of players will also throw in king jack suited and ace 10 suited, so something like that. And he should have some of the bluffs in his range of ace 5 to ace deuce suited, but I don't think that's real world realistic. So we'll see what Jonathan says.
In this scenario. Well, let's say they are going to go with all the best hands like this. Let's just presume they're going really strong. If they're going really strong, we go to Tool, Hand Range Calculator. We want 41% equity. Calculate hand range. And in this case, you can see we can get it all in with only ace, king, and pocket queens or better. So if the opponent's jamming only the best hands, we should be folding ace, queen, which you will find is the case against a lot of players. Let's say they're going a little bit wider. Let's say they're jamming 10s, 9s, ace, jack suited, ace, queen offsuit. We can do Hand Range Calculator again. Same scenario. As you see, we get a little bit wider, but not quite. Now we call off 10s or better. So ace queen still a fold. All right. What if they are even wider? I don't think most people are going to be jamming something like this. I think this is probably a little bit too optimistic, but let's just presume they do this. We can go through.
This is very common in the games I play.
And now you see ace queen offsuit finally becomes a call.
This is very common in the games that I play. This range that he's talking about right here, the micro and low stakes. This is what does it.
So against most tight-ish four bettors,
at 40 big blinds, not at 50 or 60. We're talking about 40 big blinds. This is generally from the hijack what I see.
You should still probably fold the ace queen, but you see now this has become just a straight math problem. There is no post-flop play, there is no position or anything like that anymore. Now it is purely, how does our hand compare to our opponent's all-in range? However, against more aggressive opponents, you are going to want to call off wider. Let me show you what I mean by this. Let's say, instead of shoving this somewhat loose range like this, let's suppose our opponent's jamming a pretty polarized range, as a lot of people will. Let's say they're jamming this, but let's say they're also jamming some low-suited aces.
There's the bluffs.
And a few sporadic bluffs like this. What if they're using this strategy? Well, now we can go through, run the same hand range calculator, and you see now we actually get to call off with all of this, which is much, much, much wider, right? And that's because our opponent is using a very polarized strategy, but it contains a lot of bluffs. If your opponent's all-in range contains a lot of bluffs, you in turn have to call off much wider. So if your initial 3-betting range was polarized, as it probably should be against most people, you just continue with the top of your range for the most part. If your range is linear, though, you're going to have to do this calculation and figure out what you should call off with. Usually it's going to be a lot of your range against an overly aggressive player. So let's suppose in this situation your opponent's now just absurd, right? Let's say they're going to jam a lot of weak suited aces. Maybe they jam all these low random suited connected hands. Maybe they jam ace 9 offsuit, king 9 offsuit. Let's go through, run hand range calculator again. You see now you're calling off with all sorts of stuff. And if you look at this, this is actually somewhat like a good strong linear 3-betting range would look like. So if you did decide to 3-bet this maniacal player linearly and they jam on you, you should actually call off with the vast majority of your 3-betting range. Like I said, the only hands you're really folding are the bad offsuit ace-x hands, right? Like say we did decide to just 3-bet straight linearly, it would be something like this, right? And if you look at that, that's actually a ton of this range. So a strong exploit against people who you know are going to jam all in on you very wide is to 3-bet very linearly and then just be prepared to call it off very wide. And remember, we're even building in a little bit of an edge in here. If you looked at the actual break-even range, let me just show you that. It's going to be even wider, right? So let's say we want 39% equity instead. You see here, now you get to call off, I mean, just like ace 5 offsuit, right, which is absurd. Which you can tell the difference between these ranges, right? In one range we're calling, I think it was ace 9 and better, and this range we're calling ace 5 and better, and that is a pretty big difference. But you do still want to build in a little bit of wiggle room just in case your assessment of your opponent's strategy is a little bit off, and also because you do want to have an edge. So as you see here, when we were deeper stacked, against most players, the ace-queen offsuit is usually just going to be a fold. But as you get shallower, if they're jamming a little bit too wide, hands like ace-queen offsuit start to become a call. Now, I don't think most people are using this very maniacal all-in strategy where they're jamming the best hands plus a pile of bluffs. But you will encounter some people who do. There was a period of time in online poker a while back where every time I raised, I expected to get 3-bet a ton, and I would actually jam almost my entire opening range as an exploit because I expected them to fold to my all-in a huge portion of the time, and it turns out they did. But if my opponents, in turn, countered me, they adjusted appropriately, they would be calling off a ton, which would have wrecked me, right? Because I'd be jamming all sorts of garbage like this, if not wider. So you definitely want to pay attention to what your opponents are doing and realize that these decisions may feel very monumental because they are for your entire stack. And when we're talking 30, 40, 50, 60 big blinds, that is a lot of chips that you don't want to lose. But realize you can break down these scenarios into a simple math problem. So figure out your pot odds and then compare your hand to your opponent's range. The only thing you really have to be very good at in this scenario is just pinpointing your opponent's range as accurately as you can. And realize, like, say you are playing against someone who's pretty loose and aggressive, and you see them 4-betting a lot. Understand, they cannot have only just the absolute best hands. Sometimes they may have only the absolute best hands, but more often than not, they're going to be showing up with a much wider range. And let's say you do call this player a few times, and they show up with aces and queens queen suited. You may think, okay, they only have the nuts. But that's not necessarily true. Realize you're going to need a big sample size to actually see what your opponents are doing. So you're going to have to make some assessments and assumptions based on their overall strategy. And if someone is generally loose, generally aggressive, generally 3-betting and 4-betting a lot, they must be bluffing some. That said, people can also play a very loose, aggressive strategy, but when they 4-bet pre-flop, they only have the absolute nuts. So be aware of those players as well. And before you do start calling off the all-in jams very wide, you do want to make sure you see your opponent 4-betting way more often than most other people. But once you do see someone 4-betting a lot in this type of scenario, or especially as stacks get shorter and shorter, you do need to adjust and you need to call off a bit wider. Quite often in scenarios like this, that's going to mean something like pocket 7s and better, ace-jack offsuit and better. And I realize that feels risky, it feels dicey, but those hands are going to show an immense amount of profit in the long run. And if you consistently 3-bet with hands like those and then fold to the 4-bet all-in, you're letting those players run you over and you are playing right into their strategy.
Interesting. This is the stuff that gets, like, this situation is rarer, but it means a lot of tournament exits if you fuck it up. So everyone folds to a normal player on the cutoff, 2.5 out of his 45 stack. You 3-bet to 7 big blinds, 10-10 on the button. Cutoff goes all in. Yeah, I gotta say, I think this one's a fold. Versus a normal range, I think we're folding here. I think we're 50-50 at best, and I think that's kind of rare. I should run this through the analyzer, but I feel like this is one I can answer. If I get it wrong, I'll run it. Wrong? Wait a goddamn minute. Wait a damn minute here. Hang on. Did I read it wrong? Oh, the cutoff. Oh, I'm an idiot. I fucked it up. I thought it was normal. Oh, god damn it. I didn't read it as cutoff. I read it as under the gun +2. I was thinking of the high or the low jack. Oh, that's stupid. All right. Well, I said I'd run it. Let's run it. So let's see. He goes 2.5 out of his 45 big blind stack. Cost me so it cost me 38. So it's his 45 plus my 45. That's 90. Hold on. 90 plus the blinds and annies. 92.5. Let's see here. So it cost me what to call 38. All right. So 38 divided by 92.5. 41% equity. Yeah, I have it. Versus the normal range. Yep. Because I'm actually going to have 45% quite often. So, yep. I'm a schmuck. I guess I need to eat. I'm getting a little spacey, I think. Everyone folds to loose aggressive player in the low jack. All right. Loose aggressive, low jack. Okay. 2.5 out of 45. You 3-bet ace-9 off from the button. Low jack 4-bets to 75. Now that's interesting. Because he didn't go all in. Which, in the games I play, means a stronger hand. Loose aggressive. All right. Well, let's run it. So it's going to be 90 in the pot, so it's going to be 92.5 again. And it costs me, he goes to 17 big blinds. That's weird. I guess we work it differently. So 36.5, right? My 17, his 17, and the 2.5 in the middle. So it costs me 10 to call. Divided by, 34, 36.5. Or, yeah. 36.5 divided by... Clear. 10 divided by 36.5. Hello? Oh my god. 10 divided by 36.5. I got fat fingers. What the fuck? 10. Why is my 0 not working? Really? What the fuck? I think my 0 is broken on my fucking calculator. So 27%. I guess we call. If we only need to win 27% of the time, right? This is a weird question. Against a loose aggressive player, you should fold and wait for a better hand to call or 5-bet. Why the fuck does it matter if he's loose aggressive? Folds to a loose aggressive player in the low jack. 2.5 out of 45. You 3-bet to 7. If he had jammed, I guess then it's a fold easily, but when he re-raises, it just means a stronger hand, I guess, right? Man, I'm fucking retarded right now. Everyone folds to a loose aggressive player in the button who raises 2.5 out of 45. You 3-bet to 10 big blinds with ace-queen offsuit from the small blind. Okay. The button goes all in. Ace-queen off is a loose aggressive. I mean, that's a call. Yeah, that's a call. All right. I definitely am a little spacey right now, but I'm starving, I think. So I'm going to mark this as complete, and hopefully that takes us back to the lesson. All right, we did all that. We're going to mark the course as complete. And let's go back to the courses. And I think we've completed this pre-flop 35 to 60 big blind section. Complete? Yes, totally complete. All right, cool. That only took 5 parts to get through. That's not so bad. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty when we start this next one at 22 to 35. All right, it's Sunday. I want to play a lot today. Got the house to myself and be playing a lot of cash games on stream too. I want to look over the schedule really quickly. I want to take like an hour. The group's final table goes off in about 25 minutes. I kind of wanted to play that. There's a 4K that I like to play. Let's see. There's this 3K shortly after that. There's the flight at 2 o'clock. Yeah, I think I'm going to try to make it back for the Grips final table experience. So I think that's the move. So I'm probably going to try to be back in a half an hour. It probably is going to take me longer, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to send you guys out to Grips and tell him I'll be there for his tournament. And I'll